Okay, so we'll start. Participants will keep joining. So, on behalf of Central Authority, I welcome everyone to episode 9 of Swimming Conservation. I'm your host Apurva, and today we have an exceptional episode dedicated to conservation efforts in India. Our focus today is one of the impactful work done by WWF India, one of the leading conservation organizations in the country. Joining us is Dr. Dipankar Ghosh, the Senior Director of Biodiversity Conservation at WWF India. Dr. Ghosh has been conservation manager for more than 25 years and brings a wealth of knowledge and experience to our discussion. He oversees programs spread across 15 states and 2 union territories. These programs aim to conserve critical ecological regions and priority species through the combination of fieldwork, policy intervention, and positive campaigns involving government stakeholders, and local communities. WWF India has been at the forefront of conservation for many years. Dr. Ghosh, welcome to Zooming Conservation. It's an honor to have you with us today. I'll hand over the session to you.
Thank you, Apurva, and I would also like to extend my thanks and gratitude to CZA, particularly the member secretary, Dr. Shukla, and everyone else, and also sincere thanks to all the senior officers joining from different zoos and organizations from different parts of the country. Give me 1 second to share my screen. Is it visible?
Yes.
Okay. So WWF is an organization which was set up in 1969. Okay, by the way, if you have a question, I can't see anyone now. So Apurva, you will need to help me in this by moderating.
Sure,
And I
sir.
would, right, so I would strongly urge all the participants, if you have any question at any point of time of my presentation, please unmute yourself and ask a question, right? With
Yes, sir.
Yeah, there is some noise coming from somewhere. So yeah, okay. So we started our journey in 1969. It's been 55 years, started in Bombay, and it's a national organization based, currently the headquarters is in Delhi, and we are present in about 26 states and union territories of the country with about 450 odd staff working in different parts of the country. This is something which is our vision, that in our country where tolerance is very high towards wildlife, ideally people should be living in harmony with nature. Now, how does one do that? Primarily two pillars. One is a biodiversity pillar, where we are looking at habitats, which is freshwater habitat, terrestrial habitats, both in the forests, grasslands, and also from plains to mountains, and the marine habitats, along with the species, along with the biodiversity which are there. They're valued by people, they are valued by our future generations, and they are also protected. That's one pillar of our work. The second one is on reducing ecological footprints. India is on a development pathway, and what we are suggesting or what we are working on is also completely aligned with the government of India's vision, which is we transit to a climate resilient and an environmentally sensitive pathway, which means that some of the actions that we take as a country should be climate resilient. We should have nature based solutions, and we all need to be environmentally sensitive. How do we do this? These are some of the actions, I would say broad actions, which are there. But there are also two very interesting things. This is something which is building a constituency, and I'll get deeper, is that WWF works at two levels: at a ground level, which is local level, and also at a global level. And that is possible because WWF is present in more than 60 countries, with like national organizations and program offices, the number will be more. And we are also working with the local administration, with the local government in different states and provinces. That is one of the strongest areas of WWF. And then we also work from policy to field or field to policy, both ways. So we derive our knowledge, we derive our strategies from the field, and we try and ensure uptake of those at different policy levels, whether it is a state board of wildlife, or whether some of us who are present in different ministry committees, we try and influence some of the policies. Was there a question? I heard somebody unmuted.
No, sir. No, sir.
Oh, okay. Okay. So what are these arrows? Now, this is a mix of what we do on biodiversity, primarily terrestrial wildlife conservation, which is done under the Wildlife and Habitats Program, a bit of biodiversity conservation in the rivers and wetlands program, marine, which is oceans and coast, and we have a new but upcoming national conservation program, and I'll talk a little bit about that. This is where we try to conserve and protect. And the next one where we are working for reducing impact, which is on sustainable agriculture, working on land use change, sustainable business, and also another wing of WWF in India where we are working on illegal wildlife trade control through traffic. How we do this? We have enabling programs, which is governance, law, and policy. We have something which is climate and energy hub that needs to be again integrated in different parts of our work. So while we try and conserve and protect, there has to be nature-based solutions. And while we are trying to reduce the impact of India's businesses or agriculture, like thirsty crops need to be more water, mindful of water usage rather than becoming overuse of water, we are trying to include what are the different solutions that can be provided together with government and local communities. And again, one more point which is very strong in our actions is a science-based and evidence-based approach, which is also strengthened by our technology for conservation program. And these are all enabling programs. This is where we work in different parts of India. I'll not bore you by describing every geography, but essentially 9 different landscapes, which is in the Western Himalayas, which is Jammu and Himachal Pradesh and Ladakh. Jammu and Kashmir, our footprint is relatively lower now, but hopefully we'll be able to increase it. In the Tarai, which is Uttarakhand, UP, Bihar. In Northeast, we are in Assam, Arunachal, and Sikkim. In Central India, primarily the 3 states, MP, Chhattisgarh, and Maharashtra. In Rajasthan also, in Sundarbans, and in the South, we are in Kerala, Tamil Nadu, and Karnataka. We also work in the marine sector, a slightly smaller program, which is mostly in the East Coast and West Coast. East Coast, we are primarily working on mangroves, whereas West Coast, it's mostly on fisheries and other species conservation. And we also work in the river basins, which is in Brahmaputra and Ganga river basin, and in the south, which is Noel and Bhabani river basins. So how do we work? We work at a policy level. We work on research, hardcore research on ground, a lot of campaigns, and some of you might have come across the Earth Hour campaign. It happens on every last Saturday every year in the month of March. And then again, implementation, on-ground implementation, whether it is conserving turtle nests. The picture that you see here is from Rishikulia beach in Odisha, to hardcore tiger conservation, translocation and stuff. So I'll come to that in a while. Who do we work with? Government at the highest level. This is a picture from the ministerial conference on tigers, which took place about 7 years back in Delhi, with the Honorable Prime Minister chairing it. With schools, with school students, which is continuously going on as I'm talking to you. There is a model conference of parties on global biodiversity framework, which is going on in Delhi, with schools from all over the country. They have come, and I must tell you, yesterday I was there as a jury, and the way these students were presenting, and these were like 10th, 11th, and 12th standard students, the way they were presenting their concepts, it sounded almost like developed country presentations, the way they have thought and the way they were mentored by some of the experts in the field. NBA has been a partner in that. With local communities, we have very strong community and our social and environmental safeguards, which kind of allows us to start and co-design our project with local communities rather than a top-down approach. What we do is more of a bottom-up approach, where we consult with communities, consult with stakeholders in the government, whether it is the administration of the forest department, and then raise funds to implement some of these actions. And then businesses, because one thing that we have also understood is that until and unless we bring the businesses on board, not from the funding point of view, but from the point of view of transforming them into more greener business, more climate sensitive or biodiversity sensitive or nature sensitive businesses, things will not progress. And that's the work that we do. Now, taking you into some of our program areas, so I will primarily talk about our freshwater conservation work, our terrestrial conservation work. Yes?
You're not very clearly audible. Can you speak a little higher?
Well, I'm talking. Um, Let me do one thing. Let me try and use a microphone. Give me 2 seconds.
Yes.
Is this better?
Yes.
Right. 1 second. Is the screen visible?
Yes, it is.
Okay, great. So I was saying that I would be telling a bit about three of our work areas, which is freshwater biodiversity and habitat conservation, our terrestrial biodiversity conservation, and our work in the marine sector. So aquatic conservation work started about 2.5 decades back, primarily with dolphins and gharials, and it got strengthened when there was a gharial crisis, and quite a number of gharials died in the Chambal River. Where we started our work on these freshwater habitats is that how are we looking at these habitats? How can one reduce pollution? How can one work on conserving these species? What we do is that this is a completely participatory approach, working with local communities and working with people who are primarily dependent on the freshwater resources for their livelihood. Even in hardcore research, local communities, we take their support, whether it is about using pingers to understand dolphins, or whether even field surveys to find out dolphin or gharial population estimation. A very strong constituency of local people. This is something that we very recently started in West Bengal, where we have been trying to get their support for conserving dolphins. And as you might have read in papers, as well as also through different fora, that dolphins generally, one of their major threat, of course, is dolphin poaching for getting oil out of their body parts. But another threat to dolphins is from the nets put by fishers. Now, we cannot certainly tell the fishers to stop fishing because it's their livelihood. There is a demand for fish. But on the other hand, if we can also make them sensitive, so that in certain areas where there is technology-based solutions, what we are trying to do, but also in some areas where fishers can shift their nets if they see dolphin groups which are moving through those areas. That work has started in Bengal. In gharials, also looking at protecting the gharial population, ensuring that their breeding success is higher, and also at times translocating gharials and ensuring that their breeding is going on well. With freshwater turtles, primarily to ensure, of course, one is to protect with the forest department and local communities, but also to ensure that their hatching is a success. So, which means that collecting turtle eggs with the forest department and the help of the local people. And I must tell you something, this is a work that we have been doing in Uttar Pradesh. During COVID time, this work got continued, even though some of our colleagues could not go to the field, but we have these what we call Nadi Mitra, or uh, something like Ramganga Mitra. So these are local community members who are volunteers, and they picked up the work together with some guidance and approvals from the forest department to protect turtle nests, getting their eggs to the hatcheries and ensuring that these turtles breed better. So this is a turtle hatchery, which is in Uttar Pradesh in Hastinapur, and then turtle nests are identified, eggs are collected carefully, and they're brought to the hatcheries. And once the turtle babies are out, we keep them in the hatchery for a while, and then we rehabilitate them together with the government in different identified stretches of the river and wetlands. In Hastinapur Wildlife Sanctuary, together with the Forest Department, we have prepared this, installed this Ganga Interpretation Center, which is showing how Ganga is not just culturally important, but also important for the local communities. And I must tell you, having been there myself, local people, they appreciate it a lot. It's written in very simple Hindi, a lot of interactive stuff, which is energy efficient. There's nothing called like a electronic display board, but through, yes, please. Yes.
Continue. No, sir, you can continue. Someone unmuted themselves.
Okay. Okay. So there was this Turtle Conservation Center, which is now a Ganga Interpretation Center. A lot of support from the local people is going on, and they also visit this area with school children. Sometimes villagers come and see this, is what's happening and how Gangaji is important not just from the cultural or religious point of view, but also from the biodiversity and from livelihood point of view, which is for the local communities. From freshwater to India's oceans and coasts and what all we do there. So primarily 3 points, which is protecting, preserving, and restoring. In India started with Marine Stewardship Council certification for fisheries. And this was possible when we worked with the Kerala government and the fisheries department in Kerala to start, or rather to establish India's first MSC certified marine fishery in Astamudi. That was about 10 years back. And now our idea is to spread the MSc certification for fisheries in different parts of our coastal states. Target states are Kerala, Karnataka, little bit of parts of Maharashtra, Gujarat, Tamil Nadu, and Andhra Pradesh, which is primarily our work on sustainable fisheries. We are also trying to work with the businesses to ensure that the seafood that they procure is sustainable. So there is a bit of behavior change that is needed. There is a trade aspect which is going on shark fin trade, where we are working with traffic. And on the other hand, reducing the impact of reduction fisheries and ensuring that the consumption of seafood is sustainable. That's something that we are trying to do. In the coastal areas, we have been involved in community-based mangrove conservation. Something interesting is happening in Odisha, in particularly in Kendrapara, where we have these community-based nurseries, and we engage the local communities to plant and protect mangroves, explain the value of mangroves to them. And a similar initiative has also started in Bengal, particularly in Sundarbans, where we are using terracotta rings as silt traps and cultivating mangroves almost in a natural way, which should be allowing us to stop erosion as well as to reclaim some of the areas from submergence. So that's something we are calling living shoreline. At a policy level, we are trying to address coastal erosion. It's a humongous task, and we are working with the government of West Bengal primarily for that, and hopefully we will be able to get some resources to work in other states also. For marine debris and pollution, I must tell you that the idea was that probably there is a lot of ghost net in the coastal areas of in the sea waters of India along India's coastline. But 3 consecutive surveys in the deep sea have found that ghost net problem is perhaps a bit less. On the other hand, whatever ghost net which are coming to the shoreline, particularly in Tamil Nadu and Kerala and one part of Gujarat, we have already started working on an upcycling, community-based upcycling initiative for ghost gear, which hopefully will have some bit of impetus in the near future. Third, which is working on threatened marine species. So we have been trying to map cetacean presence like the spinner dolphins and few other species. On sea turtle conservation, we are trying to work with local organizations in different states. One of our long-standing work in this particular area is with the Odisha Forest Department and the local communities in Rishikulia, where every time during turtle hatching or turtle nesting, for olive ridley turtles, we have this whole community-based approach where we work with the local communities and involve them to protect turtle nests and all the way till hatching takes place and ensuring that the hatchlings go back to the sea. Something that we have started very recently, which is monitoring lesser known species. And there is again another plan for the marine protected areas and perhaps working with the government and local communities on other effective area based conservation measures like OECMs in future along India's coastline. Coming from freshwater and after the marine work, let me tell you a little bit about the wildlife and in the terrestrial habitats. This is by far our largest program. Um, and the motto, or rather the objective, is to ensure that wildlife that are globally important, which are found in India, they thrive in resilient ecosystem. So we have primarily five different objectives. One is about management and protection, where we try and strengthen the efforts of the government and other institutes and organizations, not getting into the details, but let me show you some examples. One is to strengthen government's efforts on tiger conservation, which is also the flagship program of WWF India. When status of tigers were disclosed, which came out in 2022 and 2023, with minimum number of tigers at 3167 and close to 3,700 tigers, we worked very closely with the National Tiger Conservation Authority and state governments, primarily in Madhya Pradesh, in Chhattisgarh, in Tamil Nadu, Uttarakhand, Uttar Pradesh, Bihar, Assam, and Bengal, in doing this whole all India tiger estimation in different through not just providing camera traps, but also our biologists have been involved with the forest department field staff in continuing and carrying out the survey. What we have also been doing is one of our flagship project in the Tarai has been something called nicknamed as Return of the Tiger or Return of the King. And we have worked very closely again with NTCA and Uttarakhand Forest Department to bring tigers back to Rajaji. And I'm happy to say that with stellar leadership shown by the Uttarakhand Forest Department and very hard work by some of our field colleagues, today we have a breeding population. Two of the tigresses which are translocated to Rajaji have recently given birth to cubs, and hopefully they will thrive and they will have a better population, a viable population in western part of Rajaji. Eastern part of Rajaji already has a viable population of tigers. Our idea to work with the forest department, NTC, and local communities is to have a viable population of tigers in the western part also. But the challenge of, or rather the challenge was in the western part, was that the habitat connectivity had severed a few years back, and now it is coming up. There is an underpass, an animal underpass, which has been put along the Chila Motichur corridor. So tigers, elephants are moving, and hopefully with the reintroduction of tigers, there would be better protection. What happens in tiger conservation or rather tiger translocation? I don't need to tell you, you are all from different zoos, so it's capture and translocation of tigers. But what takes place after that is very important, which is post-release monitoring, especially with VHF tracking, with satellite collars and VHF trackers. And at some point of time when the tiger moves to human-dominated spaces, then sometimes alerting the people, alerting the authorities to ensure that there is no conflict or there is no untoward incident. Yes, so Return of the King has happened. The tiger is back, and hopefully they will breed well and they will thrive well in the western part of Rajaji. These are quite smart animals. There was this particular individual, a male, which kind of tried to establish its territory in western part of Rajaji. On couple of occasions, it moved towards human habitations, and we were quite worried is that if it goes into human habitation, kills a livestock, then there might be conflict. But perhaps the tiger read our mind and came back and finally established a territory deep inside the forest. A second one is about a second objective, or a broader objective is about community stewardship strengthening, where we try and promote inclusive conservation. One of our work is in Arunachal Pradesh and in Karbi Anglong district of Assam, where we are promoting this community conserved area concept, working in Tamil Nadu and Kerala for promoting community forest rights. Kerala has been one of the pioneers in including CFR, the community forest rights, adjacent to Parambikulam Tiger Reserve and some of the adjacent areas. The idea is also to ensure that local people's support is also there for conservation, because without their support, landscape conservation becomes very difficult. A very important one currently is maintaining landscape integrity or maintaining connectivity within the landscapes. How we do it, let me show you. Um, uh, this is what is the way forward, but let me take you a little farther. We have a very strong coalition for wildlife corridors. The landscapes are huge from the Asian context. I'm not talking about the landscapes which are in Africa or even in some parts of Asia like Russia or Mongolia. But in crowded spaces, in crowded countries like us, or in neighboring countries in South Asia, corridors in the terrestrial landscapes have a lot of importance, and these corridors are getting either fragmented by infrastructure, industries, reclamation of land. And one organization won't be able to manage these together with the government. So we now have a coalition of all these NGOs who are working in different geographies. And we started working with the government. With two states, our work has gone far and ahead. In Madhya Pradesh and Maharashtra, we have worked with the State Forest Department and other line agencies, including the district administration, the Department of Rural Development, Department of Industries, to ensure how these corridors or landscape connectivity can be maintained for longer term. We are trying to have successful models replicated for managing human-wildlife conflict. How are we doing it? This is what we do in different parts of our country. In the Western Himalaya landscape, we try to put, or rather demonstrate by putting 100 corrals to protect livestock from snow leopards and other carnivores like bears. In the Tarai, we have an ex gratia system where we are trying to scale up the livestock insurance work and also putting physical barriers, having a group of local volunteers, villagers known as Bag Mitras, like the Nadi Mitras. Again, they have been working very well during COVID time, and currently supporting the forest department in managing conflict. Similar activities are also going on other landscapes, and details are here. What we also did since 2003, 2004 onwards, we have been working in different parts of the country to work for human-elephant conflict management. It started sometime in 2003, 2004 in two landscapes, in Brahmaputra landscape in Assam and in the Western Ghats Nilgiris landscape. So towards 2022, we started getting our almost 18 years, almost 2 decades of knowledge. And we reached out to Project Elephant, and together with Project Elephant of the MOEFCC and the Wildlife Institute of India, we came up with the field manual for managing human-elephant conflict, which is now getting translated in different languages. And hopefully we will be able to penetrate in all the elephant-bearing divisions to help local people, help the forest department, help panchayats, help district administration to manage conflict using some of the evidence-based methods, because this remains as one of the major challenge in the country, where 600 people die due to human-elephant encounters every year. We are also trying to understand the human-tiger conflict a bit better. In several states, we are partnering, or we have partnered with the State Forest Department, and provided radio collars, collared tigers, and monitoring them jointly to understand their habitat use and their behavior, which will ultimately help us plan how to manage tigers in these crowded or human-dominated landscapes. And one such is the farmland tigers in Uttar Pradesh. I must say that the tolerance of local people, stellar work by the Forest Department in Uttar Pradesh, the conflict is not as much as one would expect. This particular tigress gave birth to three sets of litters in the paddy field and wheat field in Uttar Pradesh in a particular area called Amaria near Pilibhit. And this kind of tiger population is still thriving in the farmlands because farmlands kind of provide cover like grasslands in some of these areas. How do we manage this conflict? Again, with the Bagh Mitras, some of the people that you see here are Bagh Mitras. So trying to work with short-term solutions and then helping the stakeholders with long-term approaches also. A fourth one is to secure wildlife habitats, easier said than done. And this is particularly an area where we are trying to work outside the protected areas to secure more habitat so that India's target for global biodiversity framework and 30 by 30 is also achieved, which is again working with CCAs, YECMs, and strengthening the PA network where required, where there are established PAs, helping the government in strengthening protection. Snapshot of our work on habitat conservation, primarily for conservation of grasslands, bringing science and evidence-based conservation measures for managing grasslands better, working on invasive species management, primarily for lantana, where we are working to figure out whether lantana could be harvested from forest areas and whether local people can have a livelihood from that. And this is a work we are doing adjacent to Sattamangalam, and also working with the forest department to manage grazing and forest fires. We all have heard the unfortunate death of 6 people from Uttarakhand recently. There is something that we also do, which is, of course, quite sad whenever there is a death of a field staff of the forest department. So we try to provide a small amount of ex gratia to the amount of 3 lakh rupees for each death case, and ex gratia that we provide to the next of kin. Essentially trying to ensure and be with the bereaved family and see if that they get a little bit of help. Um, Something that is very interesting and where we have already attended a couple of workshops together with the CZA is this whole One Health approach, where we are trying to figure out how to help the government establish a disease surveillance protocol in some of the key landscapes where the demarcation between areas which are used by livestock and herbivores is very, very thin. So something that we started in Assam and some parts of Tarai in Uttar Pradesh is going on. Hopefully, we will be able to strengthen our work there. Lastly, what we do for wildlife trade through traffic. See the number of wildlife seizures. This is data from 2022. Quite a bit of seizure, and primarily Asian big cats, marine mammals, marine species. They comprise a lot of these seizures. India used to be a source country. Now India is becoming a consumer country as far as exotic pets are concerned. So we do these very focused studies of illegal wildlife trade. We looked at India's sea cucumber trade and brought to the fore how sea cucumbers are traded and often illegally. And the problem is that sea cucumber is legal in Sri Lanka, but it's illegal. Uh, Trade of sea cucumber trade is illegal in our country. So at times, sea cucumbers are harvested from the Indian shores and they are exported to countries for trade. So that's something we are working with the authorities. So our idea is to ensure that even the amended Wildlife Protection Act has got a cited section. Our idea is to work with the government, with the state government, with the judiciary to ensure that CITES implementation is strengthened, understanding is strengthened, understanding of the Wildlife Protection Act and other ancillary act is strengthened, and ensure that there is responsible consumption and the supply chains are also responsible, which can then break the chain for illegal wildlife trade. These are our partners, a very close coordination with the Wildlife Crime Control Bureau. Apurva, you were there in one part of the workshop that we had 2 days back, which was hosted by Wildlife Crime Control Bureau, and that was a meeting co-organized with South Asian Wildlife Enforcement Network, SAWEN, primarily to have more stronger collaboration between WCCB in India and Nepal.
Yes, sir.
Capacity is building is quite big. These data are slightly dated, more than 2,500 people, and when I say people, these are all mostly government officers and lawyers, and their capacity building has been done by traffic. We have already conducted about 50 odd sessions in the last 5 years, so almost a fairly intensive training session every year. Something which is very close to many of us with this whole sniffer dog program, and I'm happy to share that this year we have been able to cross 100 sniffer dogs. During COVID years we could not do much, but in 10 years we have been able to deploy 27 dog squads in different parts of the country. In a country that has 1.4 billion people, we need more protection. There has to be not 100, but there has to be thousands of these canine or canines helping the authorities to protect our wildlife, and hopefully one day we'll reach there. Some of the illegal wildlife trade studies that we do work with the airport authorities, CISF, for spreading awareness and knowledge, doing some of these publications. And something which we also try to do is to come up with simple posters, simple brochures to show that what is legal and what is illegal in terms of different traded species. Regional collaboration is something that is pretty important, and we are able to do this with the government, and very strong relationship between India, Bhutan, and Nepal, primarily, and also using the presence of WWF offices in these three countries to ensure that cross-border trade is also reduced. So I'll stop here. Thank you so much. I'm open for any questions.
Thank you so much, sir. I would request participants, if they have any questions, they can unmute themselves or they can write it in chat box. Okay. Till then, sir, I'll take some questions. So I wanted to ask, just a second, sir. What role do positive campaigns play in changing public's perceptions and behavior toward the conservation?
Good question, Apurva. It changes behavior. It makes people more responsible. I tell you, when we started our whole Earth Hour campaign, and I remember this was, I think 2010 March, when we were having our Earth Hour program in Delhi Heart, and a very senior retired government officer, a bureaucrat, came, and he said, how will you reduce climate change impacts by observing Earth Hour for 60 minutes? I said, sir, this is a campaign. It's not just about reducing electricity usage over those 60 minutes, but it's also about those 60 minutes, whether you do some performance or you have lectures or through music, is to tell people and tell the audience and tell the focus group that your change in behavior by switching off unnecessary electric gadgets or using the air conditioner at 27, or nowadays there are these inverter AC where you can, based on how many people are using that particular room, you can have the air conditioner to perform at a 50% or 60% efficiency. You will be able to be climate friendly, you will be able to be effective or efficient user of energy. And I must tell you that over the years I have seen even people in my own RWA, they are changing, the behavior is changing. We have to do continuous campaign and give solutions, give very simple, understanding, doable solutions. Telling that people in China are consuming tiger products. There is nothing much one could do in India. But if we say that reduce your water usage, so that if 1 million people can save a liter of water, think how many million gallons of water will be conserved. So I must say that positive campaigning has a huge role in the country.
Okay, Tom. And how does WWF India approach the issue of human-wildlife conflict, especially in densely populated cities?
Again, a good question. Our work is primarily by strengthening the actions of the government, but also have an inclusive approach. And there is something which is working very well. We had these volunteers who often stood out, and they became warriors whenever there has been human wildlife conflict. So in In Assam, we have anti-depredation squads, local volunteers, local youth, people who are just out of college, helping the forest department, helping WWF to push wild elephants back from human-dominated species. We call them anti-depredation squads, completely voluntary, and similar kind of volunteers have now started working as Bagh Mitras, again volunteers, supporting the government as Bagh Mitras. And a similar initiative is going to start very soon in Sundarbans as, or rather started as Prakriti Bandhus. They're authorized by the government to take actions together or to take action side by side with government officers, government field staff, which is essentially a force multiplier, and that helps a lot. It has to be an inclusive approach to manage conflict.
And so you have been in this field for very long. So what were the some of the biggest challenges that you face in field of conservation, and how do you address them? Like you as in personally and also organization wise.
Okay, quite a tall question, I must say. I would say the opportunities. If we can simplify conservation, which is the whole ecological aspect and biological aspect, the social aspect, the political aspect, and by political, I don't mean political parties, but the policy aspect, the strategic aspect. If we can simplify these aspects, conservation is possible. We have very good success for community-based conservation in Arunachal Pradesh, where local people are custodians of forests, which are called unclassed state forest. And we now have close to 2,000 square kilometer of forests, high biodiversity forest in Arunachal Pradesh, which are managed and conserved by local people with the support of district administration and forest department and WWF. This is something that has not happened before. It has happened over the last 15 years, and now different organizations are coming together to advance this. So if we can give simple solutions, provide a platform to local people, make the connect between the government and local communities, conservation is very much possible. Challenge, I think as a country, sustainable funding is a challenge for conservation. Conservation tasks take longer time. For instance, campaign, uh, you can start a campaign in a year, but campaign needs to be continued for 3 to 5 year period. Sustainable funding, whatever tiny it may be, needs to come for a few years rather than a lot of money in 1 year. So sustainable funding is a challenge. And another challenge that we are facing now is young conservationists. There are so many opportunities now. NGOs and civil society organizations. I must say that we cannot pay like a for-profit company, right? This is different. So now that for-profit companies are there, and then there are a lot of opportunities in there. It's good for people, good for youth, but we are getting less number of people in the sector. And this is not just for WWF. I've been talking to a lot of colleagues. The number of people who are coming in this field, and I see one person here, Naeem Akhtar. Naeem has been a colleague, and we work together in Wildlife Trust of India, and we are there. We are in this field for almost 3 decades. I'm not sure if today's youth will be in an NGO for 3 decades. I've seen very good people working in WWF or other organizations, and after 3 to 5 years, they say, "Sir, we have got our knowledge, and now we will join a for-profit company, whether it's a consultancy or something." Of course, they want a secured future. That's a challenge, and we have to manage it together.
Also, sir, since you mentioned about the communities, I always have this one specific question about involvement of engagement of communities. So, uh, like, what were your challenges working with the community, especially if you talk about northeastern states?
Um, I won't say a challenge. I would say it takes time to build trust between the local communities and NGOs and government. So when we approach, we don't approach as researchers. We approach that, well, we are an NGO and we want to work with you as much as we want to work with the government. Give you an example. This was in 2005, 2006. We were working in Sikkim for wetland conservation. And if you have visited Sikkim, or if there is anybody from Sikkim or has visited Gangtok, Very close to Gangtok, there is a wetland called Somgo wetland at an altitude of about close to 10,000 feet. This was a wetland. This particular wetland needed conservation measures, which we identified in 2005, 2006. This still is a reserve forest, and we figured out a lot of local people depend on that particular wetland primarily for their livelihoods from tourism. So we started working with the local people, got them involved, and prepared something called Lake Conservation Guidelines for Sikkim, which started by charging every tourist rupees 10, and that money was pulled back. A part of that money was pulled back for development of local people. It took some time to build a trust, but once the trust was built, WWF moved out. The local people started managing it, and today Lake Conservation Committee of Somgo is a big entity in Somgo. My colleagues from Sikkim, they say that they have good funds, they have good people, they have social scientists and biologists working from them. So I wouldn't say challenge, I would say the approach. If we can approach with a very honest and open mindset, there might be initial difficulties in getting and building this trust, but whenever it is built, then there's no looking back.
Also, sir, when we talk about conservation, always need to find innovative way to get some things done. So, what are some innovative conservation strategies or technologies that WWF adopted?
Well, I'll be honest here. We should have adopted much more innovative strategies, given that a lot of Indians are there in the tech space. We are trying AI and ML based analysis of big data. So something like big data management, and looking at how, for instance, human wildlife conflict is appearing in different print media or electronic media, and trying to figure out how a behavior change can be done. When we say human wildlife conflict, we have already given a negative connotation to the whole problem. But if we can say human wildlife interaction, then things change. So, how we are shaping the media mind, how we are shaping the behavior of stakeholders, that's very important. And there we are taking help of AI and ML. We are doing some AI based analysis of forest fire, and hopefully, in the next year or within the next year, we will be able to come up with some prediction model. Uh, Maybe looking at where not like pinpointing where exactly in that particular hectare where the next fire will be, but at least in have some geographies on where fire predictions or when one needs to be more alert to manage fire. So that we are also taking, of course, these are established technologies on like remote sensing and GIS, as well as remote monitoring of animals, whether it is PTT for raptors or radio collars for elephants and tigers. That's we are deploying. But something more that we would like to do is to have indigenously developed collars. Uh, because importing these collars is extremely tough. So we are trying to see and work with the different government institutes on how these collars can be developed in the country. We are working with Wildlife Institute of India and the MOEFCC. Something interesting which is called RODIS, Rhino DNA Indexing System, where with Wildlife Institute of India and scientists there, we have been able to map uh, the genetic variability and diversity of rhino populations from within the country, and that can also be used in court whenever there is a seizure of a rhino horn or other rhino body part. It has been used once, and there has been a conviction in one such cases. So RODIS is, again, I would say, it's a technology which we borrowed from South Africa, and then we are successfully implementing it in India. So it's a developing field. Innovation is coming in, and we need to innovate in our daily life also. Trying to innovate with strategies. We have colleagues from IIM. So even in system thinking and design thinking, we are trying to deploy innovation.
Also, so new technologies can be used in rescue mainly. And
Indeed, we are not much in the space of rescue. There are other organizations which work. So we provide back end support, but not in the front. We are not much in the rescue space.
also, so one of your project of dog squad has been very successful. Can you tell something about it? how the idea came, how was it implemented?
Okay, good. The idea came from a discussion. At that point of time, we had Dr. Samir Sinha as the head of traffic, as a very senior forest officer from Uttarakhand cadre, currently the chief wildlife warden. So, in a discussion between Dr. Sinha and our CEO, Mr. Ravi Singh, they were discussing that, well, if sniffer dogs, which are now sniffing out narcotics and arms, if they could also sniff out wildlife products. So we started talking to these dog training centers of ITBP and CRPF and started getting dogs trained. The Where the success comes is not just in deploying these dog squads when a crime has taken place in crime scene investigation, but they also act as deterrent, because poachers or would-be poacher would know that, well, if there is a sniffer dog squad nearby, it would find out. So that helps. And as part of some of the government committees, I have seen that these sniffer dog squads, they actually demonstrate that there is a skill which also kind of works as a deterrent for wildlife crime. Well, there are a lot of people shouting behind you, Apurva.
Sorry for that, sir.
No problem.
Also, sir, what do you see as the future conservation in India, and what are some upcoming projects and initiatives of WWF?
Um, well, I see the future is good. The government is very keen and I would say very proactive in taking conservation to a different level. I am yet to come across any leadership in any country which has done a transcontinental translocation, and that too of big cats like cheetah. So think about the political will. Think about the support that our country has for conservation, but this also needs a lot of support and investment from the businesses. CSR needs to come in a big way for conservation, and not just donation to organizations or government, but also in their practice. When an industry is planned and a greenfield development is planned, I know that Ministry of Road Transport and Highway with notifications has said that avoid wildlife areas or wildlife habitats as much as possible when road expansion is going on. So similar initiatives need to be taken up by private businesses, and they need to avoid these wildlife habitats whenever they have industries. They need to ensure that the business impacts are not harming biodiversity. That needs to be there. Second, biodiversity conservation needs to be a movement. Look at today's program. There are probably 50 participants today. When we do WebEx and we make it open, there are not more than 100 people. But you do a YouTube program or a video with music, or you have something on even something like um, a talk show kind of thing, there are thousands of people. So how many people are we getting interested in biodiversity conservation? That's what is important. And the role is for us, for each of us who are on this call, apart from our job, apart from our daily work, we need to inspire people. We need to get people to support conservation initiatives. And that's where we will be able to succeed, I would say.
Yes, sir. I would like to request if participants have any questions.
Yeah, there was no question from anyone. I could be on.
Yeah.
You were asking questions. It's a Friday afternoon. I mean, rather evening. It's 5 o'clock. Maybe
Yeah.
everybody needs to rush back to their homes.
No, so there don't seem to be any more questions from participants. It was very nice discussion, sir. Can I move forward to vote of thanks?
Thank you. Thank you.
So that brings us to the end of the insightful episode of Zooming Conservation. On behalf of our entire team, I would like to extend heartfelt thank you to Dr. Dipankar Ghosh for sharing his extensive knowledge and experience with us today. To our listeners, thank you for tuning in. We maximum have Zoo people joining in. So thank you for making time and joining. We hope this episode has given you a deeper understanding of critical conservation work that has been done in India and how you can contribute. Join us on our next episode where we'll continue to explore the wonders of wildlife and conservation. Until then, stay curious and stay committed. Thank you. Thank you so much.
Thanks a lot. And if there is